Hashivenu Hashem Elecha Benashuva Chadeshamenu Deshamenu Kakedem Alai lai 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 ha 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 lai 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 lai. Okay, welcome everyone. Nobody, if anybody's watching, I can't tell yet. But my mother, Bezrat Hashem, is going to be watching, and next week she'll be here, because next Shabbos is my son's bar mitzvah. Yeah, at Mayanot. Everyone's invited to shul and the kiddush at least. And that's going to be a big battle to feed all these people and the party and the relatives and everything. Bezrat Hashem, but good problems to have. And yesterday was my birthday, so Mazel Tov to me. If you're wondering, I'm 54 years old. Some people think I'm 70. Some people think I'm 40. Some, very few. But at least I can say I'm a grandfather. Baruch Hashem, my children saved me. And you know, my grandkids will grow up and they'll say, Zaidi, you look exactly the same as when I was born. Bezrat Hashem, I look even better by then. So every year on my birthday, I go to the kotel. It's the only time really, the whole year, that I go to the kotel, unless, God forbid, there's something I really need to daven for. And I just made it so that I made this decision many years ago so that I would have an excuse to go to the kotel. Force myself to go there. And I daven mincha, I say some tehillim, go back to work. And my kids were very disappointed. They made a cake for me. I didn't want it. They wanted to buy me presents. I don't like presents. They said, what can we do for you? I said, you don't have to do anything for me. That's it. Just, let it go. But in Chabad, you give brachas on your birthday. So we'll say there's still the pchina of the birthday. So Bezrat Hashem, everyone should be blessed with parnasa and health and shalom bayit. And those that need to get married should get married. And to have children, healthy children, chassid shenachasam your children. And to own a home in Eretz Yisrael, at least one, if not multiple homes, Bezrat Hashem, and everything in a revealed good way, Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so we're continuing in Torah Yud Bet, which is really not such a long Torah, but because we're reading all these notes, it's taking a little longer than normal to go through, but it's fine. What's the rush? The only place we're going is Olam Haba, and there we're going to learn Torah anyhow, so we might as well learn it in Olam Hazeh. So we're learning about, the lesson is called Ayeh. It's part 2, lesson 12 in the Likutey Moharan. It's one of the famous lessons in the Likutey Moharan. I would say Ayeh and Azamra, which we've learned several times, Reish Pei Bet. 282, which talks about Nikodot Tovot, finding the good, and even it's brought into this lesson a little bit. And here, Ayeh, Rabbi Nachman starts off with the idea that every downfall is for the purpose of going back up, that the actual going up starts with the going down. So a person should know that when they're going down, that they're actually the beginning of going up. And the moment that you acknowledge that, you already create the going up. And that's in general what we're talking about. Now we got to this place where he talked about, well, what if you fall into these Mekamot Metunafim is what he calls them. Disgusting, dark places, and you can think of whatever dark place you want. I don't know if you know Yanai, well, what's his last name? You probably don't know him. You know him?
Spender, that you're talking about?
He's an Israeli guy. Yanai is a videographer. And he has a documentary that he made about himself. And he put it up on YouTube. Noga sent me the link. I just started watching it. And he also does a lot of videos for my friend upstairs, Yosef Goodman, does the concerts, and in general, a very talented guy. So this guy grew up in Bnei Brak, and his mother, who was married to, I think they're a Russian, secular Russian guy, became a Baalat Tshuva, got divorced, and then she married like this big Mikubal, what's his name, something Sulam. Forgot his name, but he's like a big Mikubal, like a big fiery, shining tzaddik. And he was 40 years older than her. So she was 45, he was 85. And this kid moves into the house of this Mikubal and grows up in the house and had a very special mother who gave him a lot of space, and he got into every bad thing you could possibly imagine. It's really, I've only watched 15 minutes of it. It's an hour and a half. It's really fascinating. She made for him a secret room in their apartment in Bnei Brak, and it's like spray painted and full of tapes, and it's like a very old room. And she let him put a TV in there. She gave him all this space. Very impressive. So he talks about how he went to a very dark place. He got addicted to heroin. He went to all the worst clubs in Tel Aviv. He went into the deepest, darkest places. Now, I'll just tell you a long story short. It's quite an amazing story. And even, I sometimes doubt it, but my wife sent him a message and he answered her back, saying the story again. He said it many times. He came to Jerusalem, completely anti-religious, not interested in anything to do with Judaism, and ended up on Tzfat Street, right near Mayanot over there. And he's sitting on his porch on Friday night smoking a cigarette and drinking a beer, and he hears the davening in Mayanot, and he was furious. He was so angry, and he said he sat there for months. I don't know how long, maybe even 6 months longer, being angry at the minyan, and then one day he decided to come, and he sat in the back of the shul, and he sat there for something like a year, and became a Baal Tshuva. And I couldn't actually believe it, because he said it so many times. He gave a kiddush, and he says, Barak's davening, no. It's not really my davening. The only reason the davening is good is because it's not Barak's davening, it's just Barak standing up there leading the davening. But it's a fascinating thing that a guy went into this dark, dark, dark place and came out through the light of davening. So that's really this lesson. That's why I mentioned it. It's really this lesson, going to these dark places. Now, Rabbi Nachman asked the question, well, why can't you find Hashem in those dark places? Because aren't those dark places being sustained by Hashem? And they are being sustained by Hashem, but they're being sustained by Hashem in a hidden way. He calls it ma'amar satum, in a way of speaking that isn't understandable. So, better to speak like that. I'm speaking, but it's not understandable. So that's where we left off. So when a person, God forbid, falls into these places, that is into the disgusting places, there Hashem's light is completely hidden and concealed. And as a result of this, a person falls into great doubts, confusing thoughts, and thoughts that they shouldn't have. And I'm assuming we all know this. I don't know. I know this. What happens is you say, is there really Hashem? Does Hashem really listen to my davening? When I say that I'm having emunah and bitachon, and I'm trusting Hashem, and I'm relying on Hashem, is it really true? That's tzveikut. And I think it's a very hard thing to have a really solid relationship with Hashem when you're a human being. Maybe an angel doesn't have a problem, but a person, it's very hard for us to have a relationship with Hashem, because Hashem is not like a Rebbe or a Rebbitzin or a parent or a friend. Hashem is the thing that's creating everything, the essence. I don't know what we call Hashem. Is beyond. So how do you have a relationship with the beyond, the Ein Sof? He doesn't end, has no beginning, has no end. And so it's very hard to do. And to create the relationship takes a lot of work on yourself, basically changing your nature So if you fall into this place where everybody is denying Hashem, then it's very easy to all of a sudden have these thoughts, is there really a God? Ki lo ro'eh sham kavod Hashem, because a person doesn't see Hashem's light. Umekumot ele mevi'im lechakirot bilbulim v'kfira. And when you fall into these places, it brings a person to asking philosophical questions that can't be answered, confusing thoughts and heretical thoughts. V'azai matchil istakel al atzmo. Then a person begins to look at themselves. V'ro'eh shehu rachok ma'od mikvodo yitbarach. And the person says, look at how far away I am from Hashem's light. You want to talk to me about tzaddikim and mekubalim. Look at me, I'm like the worst of the worst. There's nothing worse than me. And even if there is worse than me, they're my friends. I get as bad as it gets. So now a person reaches that place, but then they say, where is Hashem? They don't even have to answer the question. They just have to say, where is Hashem? And since a person sees that they're very far away from Hashem, because they fell into these places, these dark places, God forbid, and this is the main essence of the person's fixing and the beginning of their going up. This is what it means. This is the aspect of the going down. The purpose of the going down is to go up. Meaning that I picture Yanai in his video, he tries to visually give you an idea of people fighting in the street and people bleeding from being punched in the face and drugs and needles and alcohol and like this music, this heavy music, and just puts you in this dark place. He says, this is where I was. This is where I found my place. But then at some point, whenever it was, he did say, Ayeh makom kavodo. Hashem, where are you? Where are you? And Rabbi Nachman says the second a person does that, they create a spark. Once you make that spark, you've already turned things around. If a person never asks the question, then they just stay in those dark places. But if a person is brought to a dark place and they say, where are you, Hashem? Then the going down already has a going up, just because you asked that question. And there's a footnote here, Likutey Halachot, which is Reb Nassan's explanation of Likutey Moharan. Ita be'divrei Admor HaKadosh v'Hanora Zal. It's brought in the words of Rabbi Nachman, the holy and exalted Rebbe. And this is what it says. Kama eitzot v'dorachim leitchazek lismoach et nafsho tamid. Some advice and some ways for a person to strengthen themselves and to be happy from their soul always. V'al yedei ze yishaer al amdo v'lo yipol leolam chas v'shalom. And through this advice, a person can keep themselves standing up, and they will never fall down, God forbid. V'zeu ikar hakol hayadua, ach ikar itchaskut biyoter hu alpi ma shekatav b'shnei torot kedoshim. This is already well known, but the way that you strengthen yourself is already written in two of Rabbi Nachman's holy Torahs. Shehem azamra le'elokai ba'odi, that one of them is a zamra, which is the famous lesson that I will sing out to Hashem with my odi. So we know that od, like the song od yoter tov, better and better and better. My odi, my od, is when, imagine you breathe out, and you breathe out all your breath, and then you squeeze out a little tiny bit more. That's the odi. So he says, I'm going to sing out to Hashem with my odi. I'm going to sing out to Hashem with my last tiny bit of breath that I can squeeze out. That is the song to Hashem. And really what he's saying in that is that if you can squeeze out a little bit more, then you can make sure you never actually fall down. Even though you might have gone down, you don't completely collapse. Umash katav al pasuk va'yeh aseh le'olah. And also the Torah that was written about the Akedah, which if we get to it, we're going to read it tonight. where Yitzchak says to Avraham, "Where's the sacrifice? Like, what is it? The goat or the sheep? Where is it?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it, my son. It's coming. It'll be here." And we know from the story that Yitzchak voluntarily, Liviud, put himself on the altar, that Avraham took his hand with the knife and was about to slaughter him. And then Hashem says, "Stop," and they look and they see that there's an animal caught with it. So it must be a ram, because its horns were caught in the bushes. That is an analogy for holding out. Think about Nachshon ben Aminadav, who was the first to walk into the Red Sea. And he kept walking and walking because the sea was supposed to split. And it got all the way up until his nose, and then it split. That's many times how Hashem tests us. And it's very hard to hold on.
Reminds me of like the midrash that comes before that Kedah, when Abraham was tested with the sea, right? When he was like, the water was up here, and then Hashem removed the sea from him. But in the zchut of him trusting in the process, the Akedah was actually not like finalized as it was supposed to, which is crazy. It's like reminds me of this like holding on to the breath, the last breath that exists.
So that's the test that we go through all the time. And are you able to hold on all the way to the end? So some people would break. They would say, look, Hashem, I'm already up to here. Let's say, I'm already up to here in the water. Will you want me to get up to here? I'll die. I can't get up to there. But if you say, I have no one else to rely on except for Hashem, the only thing I can do is take another step forward, then you've already taken that extra step that allows Hashem to say, okay, now. And you could say, well, Hashem, why do we have to get to that point? Why can't you just say, okay, I'm going to test you. Tested, okay, here's the $1 million, here's everything, here's your health, here's everything you asked for. And we know that this is Hashem's laboratory for our soul to grow. It's just, it's not easy, it's never easy. And I'm trying to think which Michael Avraham used to love to tell the story. I don't remember which Rebbe it was, the Seer Lublin, one of the big Rebbes. It was Rosh Hashanah, and afterwards he told the Hasidim, I heard all of your prayers. And your prayers were, Hashem, make it a little easier for me this year. Don't make it so hard with my livelihood and with traveling and with my children, whatever it is, make it easier. And he says to the Hasidim, Hashem doesn't want it to be easier for you. Now that's where he liked to stop the story, just because he liked to annoy people. But what does it mean that Hashem doesn't want it to be easier for you? So we have their perspective as adults, and we can look at a kid. You see a kid comes to shul, and somebody gives them a lollipop. And the father's like, all right. And then somebody else gives the kid a lollipop. And I've seen people pull out bags from their coat and give it to kids. And the kid is stuffing as much candy in their mouth. And at some point, the father says, or the mother, give me that. And the kid's like, what are you taking my candy away for? He says, it's not good for you. But the kid doesn't see that. So that's essentially what we're experiencing. Hashem knows what's good for us. And we feel like we know what's good for us, but so does the kid who's eating the candy, feels that they know what's good for them. So we get into these places where we're tested, and we have to get to sometimes even above our head. And Rabbi Nachman is saying, we have two lessons here. One is you sing out to Hashem with my odi, with my last breath. And the other is remember, where is the ram for the sacrifice? Meaning, we'll get all the way to the stage of Avraham lifting his hand to shecht his son, and that's when the salvation will come. And these are essentially the two pieces of advice for preventing yourself from ever falling down completely. Ki haTorah azama v'chulei mivoar she'adam ro'eh sherachok ma'od ma'od ma'Hashem yitbarach u'ma'asav mechoraim ma'od. What does it say in the Zamra? that when a person sees that they're very, very far away from Hashem and they have disgusting actions, אף על פי כן, nonetheless, יראה לחפש ולבקש למצוא בעצמו איזה נקודה טובה. Nonetheless, a person needs to look in themselves and search in themselves and do a bedikat chametz inside themselves to find one tiny little good point. כי איך אפשר שלא עשה איזה מצווה מימיו? Because how is it possible that the person didn't do one good thing in their life? You know, sometimes I have days where I say, Hashem, did I even do anything productive this whole day? Did I even do anything worthy of you creating the whole world and creating me to be here? And there's always something that I can find. I did at least one thing. I'm lucky I get to lead the davening most mornings, so I can always fall back on that. Well, I led the davening this morning. I can say, well, I'm giving you a lesson tonight. You know, I've got a podcast that I'm editing and lots of people listen to it. So there's always something that I can find that I did good. We know there's the famous story, Ayeh knows it because I've said it 100 times, of the depressed tzaddik. Rabbi Nachman brings the story, and for Chabad, there's like, you could pick it up, it's funny.
So the Russian school never loses.
And in Chabad, this is a contradiction. There can't be a depressed tzaddik. If you're a tzaddik, then you have no Yetzirah. So how could you be depressed? But in Breslov, apparently, you can be a depressed tzaddik. Different approaches to tzaddikim. In Breslov, as far as I know, you can be a tzaddik on a very high level and still have a Yetzirah. Which in Chabad, I actually mentioned this to my wife this morning. A couple of years ago, I read in a Chabad newsletter, the weekly Farbrengen, which I print up every Shabbos, about the Rebbe on Simchat Torah saying that his Yetzer Hara is telling him, wow, you're really a good Rebbe. Look at all these Hasidim. You're something else. And he said it out loud, and he said, so I want us to prove to the Yetzer Hara that, you know, I don't remember exactly what it said there, but something like, you're really serving Hashem and not serving the Rebbe, or something along those lines. And so the Hasidim danced with more fervor. That's what it said. I showed it to a friend of mine who was a shaliach and was the guy that makarved me when I was a teenager. I happened to be visiting South Florida at the time. I showed it to him, and he said, no, that's a mistake. The Rebbe didn't have a Yetzer Hara. There's no way the Rebbe had a Yetzer Hara. I said, but Chabad published this. This is a Chabad internal newsletter. I didn't... It's not like from Esha Torah, God forbid. So I don't think it's such a big deal if a tzaddik has a Yetzer Hara. The tzaddik's Yetzer Hara is not coming from desire to eat bacon and to watch Netflix on Shabbos. It's coming from saying you're a great tzaddik, and which makes sense. There was another story that I came across, which I also wondered, how did anybody know about the story? But maybe the person said it before he passed away. So it's some tzaddik who's laying on his deathbed. The Chevra Kadisha is waiting around for him to pass away. They called the Chevra Kadisha. And he's about to say Shema, and he hears the Shema before you die. If you have a moment and you're with it, you say Shema before you die. And he hears his Yetzer Hara say, give a really good, strong Shema before you leave this world. So they'll say, we never heard something like that before. And so instead he whispers, Shema Yisrael. So I guess he didn't die that second. And they looked at him like, what are you doing? He's like, the Yetzer Hara wanted me to give a good one, so I was quiet. I'm guessing that's how we know the story, or somebody made it up and it's just a good story. But the point is the same. You know, the person can be on that level and still have some type of Yetzer Hara. Okay. אף על פי שגם המצווה יש בה... Oh, I didn't tell you about the depressed tzaddik. That's how we got there. So there's a tzaddik who's laying in bed and he can't get out of bed. Hi to Alice. Can't get out of bed. He's so depressed. And how does he get himself out of bed? Eventually, he says, I'm worthless. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I didn't do this right. Even the one mitzvah that I didn't do it with a full heart. I didn't do it with the full intention. He's really bringing himself down. Really, the Yetzer Hara bringing him down. But he says, shelo asani goy. I wasn't born a goy. I was born a Jew. And from that, he lifted himself up. And he said, and I also did this, and I also did that. And from that one little thing, he got himself out of bed, and he was able to daven. And the analogy that Rabbi Nachman gives is, maybe, I don't know if they had these lights. In World War II, they had the lights, these big lights that would go across the sky. They used to use them in movie theaters when I was a kid, so that everyone would see the lights in the sky and everyone would come to the movie theater. But it was to find the planes in the night. So he said, this is like those lights that you move it a tiny bit down below and it goes all the way across the sky. So this tiny little move that the tzaddik did by getting himself out of bed in order to daven, in heaven moved thousands of miles or kilometers or whatever we use in heaven. So this is the advice that Rabbi Nachman is giving. In order to keep yourself from getting depressed, you have to constantly lift yourself up. And so now even the mitzvah that a person did, they didn't do in the purest and best way. There's some dirty stuff in the mitzvah as well. Nonetheless, there's for sure something good about it. Oh!
I just decided to come to the men's section.
Oh, I forgot to tell you to save us sushi.
I need to tell Ed that you like sushi. No, I have to go home.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for visiting.
Go ahead.
וכן יבקש וימצא בעצמו עוד איזה נקודות טובות וכולי. And so a person should find within themselves more good points and so on. ועל ידי זה יוכל להתפלל וכולי. And then a person through this can daven and so on. וזהו הזמה וכולי איה שם. And this is הזמה, and go look there. So there's more here, but we're just going to go back to the text and continue. So that was the advice. There's two pieces of advice. One, to find the good points in yourself. And the second is to not give up hope. Even if you find yourself being sacrificed by your father, hold out that the ram is somewhere. Shalom Aleichem to David Avraham. This is 10 Mitzvah Street. You want to know where we are. Come in from the blue door. Okay. וצריך בשביל זה התקשרות לצדיקים. In order that the going down is actually for an ascent, you have to be connected to the tzaddikim. I guess there are people that could do this. Must be some people that just did this on their own, with their own motivation and intuition. But all the more so, like if you learn this stuff again and again and again, like Ayeh is ready, you shouldn't have any downfalls, but you can handle them all. Because you learned this so many times. It'd be like a piece of cake, Hashem's going to knock you down. You're like, azamra. Ayeh makom kavodo. Yeah, no problem, no big deal. So he says, when you have this connection with tzaddikim, so it gives you strength in order to handle these things. It also gives you knowledge. V'hinei hayotze mitorah zo l'maaseh. How do we bring this Torah to a practical place? Hu litzok ulevakesh betfilat chatzot. It's to shout out and cry out to Hashem in the midnight davening. Or afal pi sha'a sha'atayim lefnei or haboker. But if you're not going to wake up for tikkun chatzot to daven at midnight, you could do it just an hour or two before the sun comes up, if you're up. Ayeh makom kavodo, that's the prayer. We say to Hashem, where are you? Now, I can tell you, I went to the kotel yesterday and I davened, and of course, I thank Hashem for this and I thank Hashem for that, and then I say, Hashem, but however, in this particular thing, where are you, Hashem? Like, why are you making it so hard for me? That's Ayeh makom kavodo. That's what he's saying. Just cry out to Hashem. If you're crying out to Hashem, you've already turned your challenge into something meaningful. That is to search for Hashem's light in everything. And to totally nullify your own ego. After he explained that a person that fell into doubtful thoughts or heretical thoughts, hatikun shelo hu, his fixing is שדווקא במקום שנפל יבקש ויצעוק איה מקום כבודו. That in that place of your suffering you cry out to Hashem and you say, Hashem, where are you? ובזה בעצמו מדבק את עצמו לכבוד העליון הנעלם והסתום במאמר בראשית. In the moment that a person in their troubles, in their difficulties, says, Hashem, where are you? With this they attach themselves to Hashem's supernal light, the light that was hidden and concealed when the world was created. What a statement, you know. The light that was concealed and hidden when the world was created. Meaning that if you want to go through this world without any awareness of Hashem, totally, I just believe in nature, science, there's no God, then this light will always be hidden from you. But the second that you say, well, maybe there is a God, and maybe God actually listens to me, which for an atheist is a very, very hard thing to even say. But the second that a person does say that, that light is revealed to them. And how is the light revealed to them? By saying that. That saying that is the revelation of the light. And then essentially the more a person says it again and again, the more light is revealed to them. And I'm guessing somebody who's a tzaddik and on a very high connected spiritual level, like the Lubavitcher Rebbe, for example, they were just always receiving Hashem's light. Sometimes on a higher level, sometimes on a lower level. I read this crazy story on Shabbos. Maybe you saw it. It was in the Living Jewish? No. Whatever is it? The Chabad newsletter in English. You read it. This woman that, what's it called? Living Jewish?
Yeah. We have it every Shabbos.
This woman who had a Jewish boyfriend and then an Israeli boyfriend, and she didn't want to convert, and eventually she's brought in front of the Rebbe and she says, I don't want to convert. He says, good, you don't have to convert, you're already a Jew. She says, me, a Jew? My family they're anti-Semites. So she goes back to Holland. She was from Holland. And she asks her mother, and her mother says, how do you know? And she said, okay, now tell me the truth. She said, your great-grandmother told my mother that she was Jewish, and I figured it out, and my mother told me that I was Jewish, and now you figured it out, and I'm telling you that we're Jewish. So it's this amazing thing that the light is always there. And how did the Rebbe see that? There's so much of the light is revealed to him that he looks at this person. Like, he didn't say, show me papers, and let me figure it out according to genealogy. He just said, oh, but you're already a Jew. How does the Rebbe know that she's a Jew? Like, the Rebbe is not a superhero. That's another thing. You have to know the Rebbe was a human being. In Judaism, we don't have people that are not human beings. We don't have like half gods. That's the point of the tzaddik, that it's a human being that's so connected to Hashem that it's like he's receiving a download from Hashem even more. His whole essence is totally bound up with Hashem, and all he's able to see is light. And we don't see that light. Why didn't we look at this woman and say, you're a Jew? Because we aren't attached to that light. But the second that a person says, Ayeh makom kavodo, they took absolute darkness and they lit a tiny little light in that darkness. He's going now to explain, and we're not going to get so far with this tonight, that this is also how it was with the korban olah, which is the sacrifice which you would take and you would elevate. I think most of the sacrifices, when you would give it to the Kohen, you would raise it up. I know the animals, a bird, I think you had to put it under your arm. But like, let's say you brought a bull, like a big, massive animal. You have to lean your whole body on it. Also a goat, any of these animals, you have to lean your body on it and pick your feet off of the ground. It's called smicha, which is what a rabbi gets. Smicha. And that's where it comes from. Like the rabbi that came above them, put themselves on this person and rested on them, in a sense, and transmitted to them something of their teaching. So you would have to lean on the animal. I don't think the bull was lifted up. They were probably lifted up somehow to be shechted. But korban olah, okay? So it's a sacrifice that is lifted up. Haba lechaper al hirurei halev, that comes to atone for heretical thoughts in your heart. She'ikar ha'avoda behakravata, the main aspect of its sacrifice, levakesh v'litzok ayeh, is to call out and ask Hashem, where are you? So this particular sacrifice, Korban Olah, was to fix thoughts in your heart, and it was, you would cry out to Hashem, where are you? And this is the request and the searching for Hashem, where are you? And this is connected to the elevation sacrifice, shemechaper al hirurei halev, which atones for bad thoughts in your heart. I'm guessing not just bad thoughts, but thoughts, like heretical thoughts against Hashem. I'll just explain, because I'm not sure if it's clear to everyone. What was the idea behind the sacrifices, and why were they abused? So, on the Temple Mount, in Jerusalem, or let's go even further back, the land of Israel has a revelation of Hashem that no place in the world has. And in the land of Israel, Jerusalem has a higher revelation of Hashem than any place else in the world. And in Jerusalem, the Har HaBayit has a higher revelation of Hashem, and in the Har HaBayit, the Kodesh Kodeshim, when it existed, had the highest. I can say when it existed, just because I was there, but at least what we call now a Kodesh Kodeshim, I don't know if it's really the place or not. It's Kipat HaSela, the Dome of the Rock. I had a class there in 1994. For an entire year, every week we went to the Temple Mount, and we went to every single place that's forbidden. We had the keys to every place, and lots of stuff was destroyed already. I was in places I wasn't supposed to be, but I didn't know at the time. So it's kind of like, when it's a fast day and you eat breakfast and then you show up to shul and everybody's like, did you eat? They want to call you up to the Torah, but they can't call you up if you ate. I'm like, what? It's a fast day? Like, oh, forget it. We can't call you up. So at least you got in breakfast. So I didn't know I wasn't allowed to go to those places. I did go to those places, and I can't go there now. So in this very holy place where Hashem's presence is revealed, in the most revealed way in this world, people would come and bring an animal or bring some type of sacrifice, which means that they had to exchange money or give up something that they owned. If they raised the animal themselves, they would bring it so that it would be slaughtered, and the Kohanim would eat them, and they would be burned on the altar. And this was supposed to give you such a high spiritual experience that you would fix whatever it was you were bringing the sacrifice for. What happened was eventually people were doing transgressions, knowing that they could bring a sacrifice and fix it. So somebody would be like, I'm going to eat a piece of bacon. It's going to taste really good. And then I'm just going to go to the Beit HaMikdash and buy some animal, and all is good. And so people ended up abusing it, and the temple was eventually destroyed. Okay, I don't want to go on further, but we'll continue next week. B'ezrat Hashem. So that's related to the Korban Olah and the elevation sacrifice. And the elevation sacrifice was to be a fixing, an atonement for these thoughts that a person would have in their heart. Okay. I'll share a short story with you, really, just as I was leaving my office. Anyone have a question? No? Okay. Ayeh used to ask a lot of questions. I guess we answered all the questions.
After you don't see, but after the class, we can share thoughts for a week. Randomly, remember Barak said so, what I thought about this.
You used to have a lot of questions. Maybe you still have them. I don't know. You're welcome to ask them if you want. So just as I'm leaving work, I'm like, oh my God, I need a story. And so I open up Rav Zevin's book, and I actually read the wrong story. I had all these short stories marked. So I read the wrong one, but it's the right one, because that's the story I'm going to tell. So there was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe had already passed away, and his son, the Midler Rebbe, had taken over. And this guy was a collector of holy books, and he was very interested in Hasidic books. And he had a massive collection of Hasidus. And he happened to come across a book that was signed by the Alter Rebbe, that had a note on the front of it that says he's using the oath of, who was it, Reb Gershon? Remember who made the decree for you can't marry more than one woman? What was his name?
Rabbeinu Gershon.
Rabbeinu Gershon. So Rabbeinu Gershon apparently also had some other tricks up his sleeve. And one of them was this oath that the Alter Rebbe wrote on this book of Chassidus. He said, I'm taking Rabbeinu Gershon's oath and I'm saying anybody that opens this book and looks at the Chassidus in here will not have a place in this world or the world to come. So this guy, he comes across the book, and I mentioned his name, I don't remember his name, David something, and he opens the book. Like he had bought the book, he had it in his house, he opens the book, and immediately a fire caught in his house, burned down the whole house, including the book, and all of his Sfarim, all of the books that he had. So he was totally devastated, of course, but, curiosity is stronger than fire. So he goes to the altar, he goes to the Mittler Rebbe, and he said, you know about the book? He said, of course I know about the book. He said, did you ever look inside? He said, no, I didn't want my house to burn down. So he said, but wouldn't it be worth it to just get a little bit of the Chassidus that was in that book? And that's how the story ended. It was a short story. I like how, the poor guy, he lost everything, lost his house, he lost all of his Sfarim, but he really wanted to know just like one little piece of Chassidus that would give him maybe some more strength in this world. Maybe it was worth it if he had just seen it for 1 second. So we should be inspired by that Bezrat Hashem. And next week we'll continue. I think coming up May 27th, I have my niece's wedding. Noga's older sister's oldest daughter's wedding. The first wedding in their family, so that's on a Tuesday night, but I'll keep you informed. Until then, everyone, shkoyach, thank you for watching and